Hey, it's Marty here, talking about ways to identify yourself, finding your identity, finding yourself, finding out what you're all about. These are rather remarkable activities that humans take part in, and we want to know who we are, and sometimes that means who identifies us in a certain way, what other people think of us, and um, what we think of ourselves. How did we shape those thoughts, those formative thoughts about ourselves? And how do we come to terms with what we find and what we experience? I, there are different ways to identify yourself. Uh, None of us have all of them available to us, but we have some of them. One of the first ones, of course, is your heritage, your history. Where'd you come from? Where did your family come from? What were they? Were they carpenters or bootmakers or politicians or doctors or lawyers or and then did they come from the old country or from some place of dignity or nobility? So you can trace those things back, and then you can kind of bring them forward to your life and think, oh, geez, these were remarkable, extraordinary people. And so, what about me? Can I make some of the same things out of my life that they made out of theirs? And such a remarkable past history is indelible. It makes a mark on you. It changes your life if you want it to, and you allow it to. And it can be positive, and it can be negative too. I didn't have such a history. I knew my father, my mother. Uh, I thought I knew my grandmother, and I had two brothers. I had no uncles that I knew of, or aunts, or cousins, or sisters. None of that stuff. And I never met any of my real grandparents. Come to find out, when my grandmother died, it took about 2 months for them to even tell me, my family. And then they said, she's not your real grandmother. And I'm like, what? My family history is so, uh, I don't know what you call it. It's just not together. And I don't have much of one. I actually had a living uncle and a living aunt when I was younger. Knew nothing about him. Never heard the word from my father's mouth that he had a brother or a sister or anything like that. And my mother, she apparently was adopted. Didn't find out any of this stuff. Took many years. So what I'm getting at is I had no heritage or history. My father said to fall back on and kind of form a personal identity. My father said that our family his family anyway, came over on the Mayflower. And that's about all I had. So for a long time I thought, wow, it must be British, because the Mayflower made up of British people, I guess. I'm not even sure that's true. But there must have been a ancestor of the Thurber family that came over on the Mayflower, in the 1600s. And I'm like, so all things British was pretty cool for a long time. Uh, and maybe fell in love with Winston Churchill and the British Bulldog and how they survived World War II, and they went on to become a great nation. And so you think, oh, I'll take on some of that persona, the British Bulldog and the British stiff upper lip and the stoicism. And so you get some of your identity from some of those places. Didn't last forever. Your identity, whether you realize it or not, changes over time. And you got to find some other spurs to creating your identity and becoming, again, over time, in a renewed effort to who your identity is. But for me, I didn't really find it in family or even heritage. Sometimes I tried to find it in place, like the West and the mountains and the pine forest. I tried to find it in the writings of Edward Abbey or Muir or some of the other great naturalists. And that works for a while, because then you can identify with their thoughts, and they're grabbing a hold of the things around them, and that's beautiful, and that worked. But that's not really part of the big work in progress for your day. You can move beyond that, I guess, or your natural progress in your heart is to move beyond using those things for your identity. You've got to find things that are active, that are not static, but what's the word for things that keep moving on? Dynamic. Your identity is dynamic. So it's a work in progress. And so for me, it went from inward to outward. I started identifying with things that got me outside of myself, which inevitably ends up the climate around you, the ecosphere around you, the people around you, and you move in out of yourself to identifying the things within you, or your heritage, or something like that, to identifying how you minister or care or serve people around you. So I turned it outward like that, and I found in my life that there were a few things that especially stood out. One was God's love. I came to realize that God created me. Now, you've got to go back to the first couple of chapters, first 3 chapters, I suppose, of Genesis, to even begin to get a little sense of what God was doing. In one chapter, he kind of just forms man and woman into being. In another chapter, he actually sculpts. He actually takes the dirt of the ground and shapes it and molds man and woman. And I don't want to sound too weird, but he takes our bodies with great skill and love, and he forms the organs and the skin, the flesh, the shape of our faces, the power of our eyes to observe and to go out into the distance and take in information, and the brain and the heart and the muscle structure and the blood supply. And I mean, when God took a hold of a lifeless, let's call it a lump of clay, he infused it with his identity, especially when he breathed in his own breath to human beings. And so there's a very special identity that can be found there in that experience of Genesis 1 and 2 and 3. And so for me, probably in my mid-20s, I began to identify with God's love of his creation, which was me. I began to take on a great sense of self-worth and self-identity because God's hand was in that identity. So that's one place where you can take on a very satisfying sense of identity, that God adores you and loves you regardless of good or bad. There's so many people get caught up in this comparison of God's love goes toward good people, but not toward bad people, and then they pick up this sense that their identity is filled with bad. And man, the Bible says we're full of bad things. But God has a love clause in his creation which says, I love you regardless of all that stuff. So that gives you a chance for a great sense of identity. It really does. And I think you would do well to take advantage of that. Another place is my family. Now, not everybody has a family, so you may not be able to find this here, but you've probably got parents, you've probably got a mother and father, and you can find a lot of identity, personal identity there. Sometimes it's negative. If you talk to Debbie about her family's identity, there's quite a bit that's negative, particularly with her father. But she's learned to look past that and find some identity in who he was and who her mother was and so forth. And you can gain a sense of what you're made of, how your parents shaped you, and how you were nurtured in the world. And if it was wrong, and if it was poor, and it was destructive at times, then you can go beyond that identity and find out and go on a search for yourself and find out what is a good identity. You know what how to use those things as negative markers so that you can find the positive markers for your identity. Uh, we're always excited, Debbie and I, when we find families that are really well put together. There's not that many of them, but we've seen families over the years, especially in the church work we did, that were so in tune with each other that the family became a unit. You know, the daughters would go on to marry sons, and the family would stay close together, maybe even live on the same acreages, 80, 100 acres or so, and the families would spread out and build their own houses. And watching that, and we've seen other families that didn't do quite that, but watching that kind of family history and family unity, if you have some of that, that can be very powerful for your own identity. And then the third one I wanted to share is today. My foot for the last 6 weeks today, this Thursday actually, was really mangled, and I couldn't do. It made me sick in the head. It made me sick in my stomach, actually. I felt like I was going through some toxic experiences because there was so much blood, black and blue. It doesn't matter now. It's much better, and I could show you a picture, but it doesn't really matter. But the thing is that it stopped me in my tracks. And it made me say, well, what's my purpose today for the last 6 weeks? And about 80% of it was just resting, eating, staying healthy. And so I've added going back to the gym. I'm starting to walk again slowly. I did 200-300 feet the other day. I'll start walking back up the dam here behind me pretty soon, I hope. And I'll start getting back on track with that purpose. But for 6 weeks, let's say, for sake of argument, that I was just constrained to my bed. My purpose is what I'm really trying to drive at. For that 6 weeks was utterly changed, deeply changed. Now my purpose is starting to change again, and it's going to probably return to some of the things I was doing when I was able to walk around the lake and so forth and other things. But your purpose changes, and your purpose is decidedly future. Your purpose is a way of finding your identity because you're saying, okay, what's my purpose today? What am I about today? What am I going to do today? Who am I going to influence there, affect, or love and care for? And so your purpose revolves around your future. And I have found personally this is one of the most satisfying places of identity because your purpose can change with your time, your place, your location, your hobbies, your desires, your skills, your training, and you can move into new purposes. There's a place in Israel called Neot Kedemim. It's I think it's about 600 plus acres of biblical agriculture reserve. It tells the story of David and Abraham and Isaac and others through the agriculture of their times, of the grain mills and the threshing floors and the water mills that would create some power to turn millstones, and how they used the olives and the almonds and the other grains and the other fruits and the trees and so forth. So and the thing I wanted to bring out was that Neot Kedemim means bringing out something of the old and bringing it into the new. Neot Kedemim means taking the old and giving it a new fresh start, fresh face, fresh use. And that's a fantastic place to me. It's one of the touchstones of my life, visiting there. I've only been there once, but I bought all the books from that place, and I read all the stories and the history. So you have a chance to Neot Kedemim yourself today. You have a chance to take the old, and especially the inspiring parts of the old, and bring them forward into the new. You've got this day. And Jesus kind of has this philosophy, almost theology as well. You have this day, it's right in front of you. What's your purpose for this day? What's your plan for this day? Is it a day of rest? Is it a day of joy? Is it a day of celebration? Is it a day of purpose? Is it a day of service? Is it a day of bewilderment and astonishment? Do you look up at the stars like the psalmist says tonight, and you look for that comet that's going by, and you recognize God's hand in these things, and that He's behind you. He's got your back. So I think that for me, and especially when you hit your 50s and your 60s and your 70s, and you start looking at your life and saying, well, I've got some years left. I've got another 5 or 10 years. God willing, you have that. Some people might think they have another 15, 20, 25. So those things kind of narrow your focus. They kind of go, oh, they're like a little tap on the shoulder saying, you got this day. How are you going to enjoy it, use it, prosper in it, be blessed by it? So if you're looking for your identity, if you're searching for your identity, those are 3 of the great ways that I found. I wish I had some great heritage. I wish there were some kings and nobles and great servants. Wilberforce, for instance, in my British day, who pretty much ended slavery through his persistence in writing. A great man in Great Britain. I don't know. It could be in my heritage, but that you're not limited to having a great, pedigree. You're not limited at all, really. The only one who is capable of limiting yourself, of finding what you want to do to identify yourself, is you. So I'm here to tell you, you've got so much ahead of you, even if you've only got one day. What are you going to do with this day? All right, talk to you later.